Hello, YouTube. Manny Beal here. Now we're in the evening time, so I'm a little dark, but I guess it's not mostly for my pretty face that you are listening in, but more for my dissertation or my desiccation of deconstruction. Um, what's it called? Dissection, I think it's called, um, of Stefan Molyneux's book, Universally Preferable Behaviour. And last time we left off starting around arguments and universality. And there are, as far as I can see, 9 premises, 7, 8 premises that we are going to dive into in this part. Hopefully, if it won't take too long, but let's see how it goes. Arguments and universality. If I choose to debate, I have implicitly accepted a wide variety of premises that are worth spending some time to unpack here. Okay, the first thing I wonder is he hasn't defined universality. I think it's the first time he deliberately refers to arguments as something that is going to be explained. And then in the first sentence, he talks about debating. So a debate is, if you're specific about terms like arguments, then start using arguments in the text afterwards. Otherwise, you're losing your reader, right? This might not be the worst of its kind, but anyhow, why not call it debating and universality then, right? So there's a connection between the text and the headline. Okay. Premise 1. Premise 1, we both exist. Okay. If I choose to debate with you, then I necessarily must accept that we both exist. It must be if I believe that I exist. This is the first typing error I've seen so far. If I believe that I exist, but you do not, then debating makes no sense and would be the action of a madman. If I were to start arguing with my reflection in a mirror, I should be sedated, not debated. Okay. So who are you talking to? Are you talking now is this existence is metaphysics, right? And you haven't done metaphysics, at least not in a coherent and strict manner, saying now I'm doing this and I'm going to define what existence is and so on, right? So if you're experiencing me as something existing, then you can say that I exist, right? And I can say, if I'm the other guy that you are referring to, that you exist. But there's we can't say we both exist, right? In the same way, because your experience of yourself is not outside yourself, right? Be careful what you say. If you say we both exist, you are actually looking at yourself from the outside. You can't do that, right? You can only look from the inside, and that is your experience. You don't see yourself outside in the same way that you see me outside. So only one of us exists for each of us at a time. It's this thing about, Descartes' cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. But the am is only there because he thinks. So the thinking is what he experienced. The am is not his experience, right? So that is one of the hardest problems, at least from my point of view and doing philosophy, is what is that I? What is that the experiencer who has the experience? Is there an experiencer having the experience? That experiencer must be outside the experience. Otherwise, it's a part of the experience. And that might be the case, but then it's the part of the experience that has the rest of the experience, right? So So it becomes some sort of artificial corner of experience that is set aside for having the rest of the experience. And that seems also a bit weird. So the I or the me or the am is very difficult to pinpoint, right? So this, at least for myself, that's the hardest problem. And you're just saying we both exist, like, solved, right? This is probably one of the hardest things in philosophy, at least to my understanding, right? It's very difficult to pinpoint, right? Because you need some experience to point to it, but it's the thing that experiences, or that might be the experiencer. But if there's no experiencer, why is there an experience? So we are getting down to sort of a singularity there where it's very hard to find a place to stand. So I guess it's possibly that it has to be axiomatically stated that I'm going with this axiom that this is the case, right? But saying we both exist, then you are putting yourself outside in the external part of your experience. Like you can propose yourself, you can point to yourself and see, I exist, right? A reflection in the mirror is not you, it's a reflection, right? So I know it's sort of on the borderline here, right? But just be careful how you do this, right? Premise 2, the senses have the capacity for accuracy. The senses have the capacity for accuracy. Accuracy. Capacity for accuracy. Okay. Since human beings cannot communicate physically, all debates necessarily involve the evidence of the senses. You cannot communicate physically? I'm not sure what he means. Writing presupposes sight. Talking requires hearing. Braille requires touch. Thus, any proposition that depends upon the invalidity of the senses automatically self-destructs. Any proposition that depends on the invalidity of the senses. What do you mean invalidity? I'm not exactly. Are you trying to say that if I'm making a proposition that says my hearing doesn't work, to propose something, let's say I have to use my voice, and then I say you can't hear anything, then I'm contradicting myself. Is that what you're trying? It's quite complicated. This, even if it sounds like it should be simple, but since human beings cannot communicate physically, can we? What about hand signs, flags, or smoke signals, Morse codes? I'm not sure. All debates necessarily involve evidence of the senses. But the senses is all that you have to establish a representation of the external world, right? So a debate is some kind of messaging between your insights as something that is outside, particularly another individual, I suppose, right? So it has to go through the senses. Language has the capacity for meaning. Yeah, be careful. Similar to premise 2, since all arguments require language, any proposition that rests on the premise that language is meaningless is immediately disproven. Using language to argue that language has no meaning is like using a courier to send a message arguing that couriers never deliver messages. Yeah, but be careful not to say that, as I pointed out in an earlier part, language is just sounds you make with your mouth, right? And the reason we say that it has meaning is because we have been trained that these particular sounds means this, that the brain somehow connects language with concepts. So if I say elephant, to you, I presume that you will be able to recreate that elephant as a concept in your mind, as an imagined elephant, right? So the sounds have been connected with concepts and others and attributes like red, and so you can imagine red and all sorts of things, right? But it's a connection between the sound and the concept or the attribute or whatever it is it's connected to. But these connections, the sound ignites the meaning in your mind. It's not the sound that has the meaning. It's just a sound like any other sound, right? There's no particularly content of that sound that is sort of, carrying meaning, while other sounds like doesn't have meaning, right? In a sort of language content connection context. Well, so the meaning arrives or is created when your brain, attaches that meaning because it has been trained to get that meaning from that particular sound. The sound doesn't carry the meaning. It's the brain that sparks the meaning when that sound arrives. So if that is what you're trying to say, then I agree. But if you say that the sounds have the meaning, I disagree. Premise 4, correction requires universal preferences. If you correct me on an error that I have made, you are implicitly accepting the fact that it would be better for me to correct my error. Your preference for me to correct my error is not subjective, but objective and universal. You don't say to me, you should change your opinion to mine because I would prefer it, but rather, you should correct your opinion because it is objectively incorrect. My error does not arise from merely disagreeing with you, but as a result of my deviance from an objective standard of truth. Your argument that I should correct my false opinion rests on the objective value of truth, i.e., that truth is universally preferable to error, and that truth is universally objective. I need to take that once more. If you correct me on an error that I have made, you are implicitly accepting the fact that it would be better for me to correct my error. Yeah. I'm not sure. I mean, if you have made the error, what you are claiming is not correct in accordance with your statement. So the content of your statement can't hold up to what it's supposed to be. So the correction of your statement or your an error, if that's an error you mean in a debate, then it's just to bring you up to scratch. It's not necessarily, it doesn't better your argument. It just brings it in, at the right level as it's supposed to be. Your preference for me to correct my error is not subjective, but objective and universal. I'm a little, skeptic about these. You just bring in that universal and then, okay, so all over the universe, something like that. That's these sort of extreme extensions of a sentence feels like out of control, right? Is it objective? It can't be, because a debate is about sounds, and sounds are attributes. At most, they are attributes, or they are some kind of language. They are not objects, so they can't be objective. Your preference for me to correct my error. So now it's a preference. I mean, I'm not. It's this. This uneasiness about the words, the way they're put together, feels like it's manipulation, right? It feels like you're constantly pulling these universal and preference and putting them in everywhere. So I'm sort of being trained to see things observe things with these new words, and because somewhere else you have defined ethics as universally preferable behavior, it will inevitably end up with, yeah, but everything I say is universal and preferable and behaviors, and that's ethics, and so it's proven, right? So you're just throwing these labels on to your arguments as if those are the ones that need to be there in order to get the proof in the end, right? It's like if you know the result of some calculation is 37, you just keep throwing 37 in, and then 37 will arrive at some time, but you're not really doing the calculation, really, right? At least that's how it feels to me. You don't say to me, you should change your opinion to mine because I would prefer it, but rather you should correct your opinion because it is objectively incorrect. No, I wouldn't say that, because objectivity is something else. It's about, that's an elephant, right? My error does not arise from merely disagreeing with you, but as a result of my deviance from an objective standard of truth. But your argument, the truth about in your argument, that's if it's a proposition. If you're proposing something, then it could be internally incorrect. There's something wrong with the logic or the structure of your proposition. I'll have to say, what the hell are you talking about? But if you're making a correct proposition, I can say it's true or false. But the objectivity of it, if we agree about it, well, then we have an objective standard about that object. But we don't have an objective standard about truth. Truth is what we need to establish to get to objectivity. So you are reversing, you're putting the cart before the horse, so, right? Your argument that I should correct my false opinion rests on the objective value of truth. But there's no objective value of truth. It's so we are going around in these circles time and time again, i.e. that truth is universally preferable to error. But truth is not comparable to error. It's truth or false, right? It's not truth or error. And that truth is universally objective. What the hell does that mean? If I say that's an elephant and you say that's true, is that universally objective? Is that elephant universally objective in the whole universe? Or what the hell are you talking about? If I don't think there's an elephant and you think there's an elephant, is it still objective, or does it suddenly become objective because we disagree about elephant? So it makes no sense to me what you are saying. Okay, premise 5. An objective methodology exists for separating truth from falsehood. What? An objective methodology. But methodologies are not objective. Objects can be objective. And methodologies do not exist. They are sort of conventions of how to do things. They are not objects. Separating truth from falsehood. You're not separating them. You don't have to separate them. It's either or. If you're saying that's an elephant, it's either true or it's false, right? For that person experience that elephant, or don't experience an elephant in the surroundings of that proposition. This is completely nonsense. It's totally weird, right? If you disagree with me, but I tell you that you must agree with me because I'm always right, it is unlikely that you would be satisfied by the rigor of my argument. If you provided good reason as to why I was wrong, but I just kept repeating that I was right because I am always right, our interaction could scarcely be categorized as a debate. Well, I would agree. The moment that I provide some sort of objective criterion for determining the truth from falsehood, I am accepting that truth is more than a matter of opinion. Now you're bringing in opinion. What is opinion? Define opinion. sort of objective criterion. A criterion can be objective, determining truth from falsehood. So if you make a proposition, that's an elephant, I say it's false, are you going to tell me that you have sort of an objective criterion to convince me that it's true? Because if I don't experience that elephant, I'm going to stick with my affirmation that it's false. Don't tell me that it's objectively true or something like that. If I don't experience that elephant, it's freaking false to me. All right? I'm accepting that truth is more than a matter of opinion. It's more than a matter of opinion. I don't see why you need an opinion, right? An opinion is something like, I think you ought to do this. That has nothing to do with the elephant or the object, right? Unless, of course, the other person is the object. Then you are having an opinion about that object. But truth has nothing to do with opinion then, right? Truth has to do with whether or not there's a person you can have an opinion about, or an elephant you can have an opinion about. Truth is not comparable to opinions. This does not necessarily mean that my objective criteria are logical. I could refer you to a religious text, for example. However, even if I do so, I am still accepting that the truth is something that is arrived at independent of mere personal assertion, that an objective methodology exists for separating truth from falsehood. I mean, I don't know what the hell he's talking about. You don't separate truth from falsehood. It's not about false. The affirmation false is as important as true, right? I mean, okay, if you want something to eat, you really want to find something, food equals true, right? If you keep getting true, food false, you're going to die, possibly, right? Let's say that. But it's not, it's equally important that it's food equals false, so I don't eat some poison shit, right? So it's not like true is better than false. Separating truth from false, are they being combined somehow? Are truth and falsehoods melting together? And you're saying, oh no, they're melting together. I'm the Canadian dude. I'm going to come here and split truth from falsehood, right? It sounds really strange. Premise 6, truth is better than falsehood. Falsehood? What is falsehood? I didn't think of that before. True, false. But is there something called truthhood? What is falsehood? Is falsehood lying? Are you talking about lying? Is better to say the truth than lying? Okay. If I tell you that, or premise 6, truth is better than falsehood. If I tell you that the world is flat, and you reply that the world is not flat, but round, then you are implicitly accepting the axiom that truth and falsehood both exist objectively, and that truth is better than falsehood. I don't know what to say about that. If I tell you that the world is flat, well, you can tell me whatever you like. I'm not necessarily going to believe it, right? If you're saying the world is flat, well, that's up to you. Do your flatness if you want, right? I reply that the world is not flat, but round. So you're implicitly accepting the axiom that truth and falsehood both exist objectively. No, truth and falsehood doesn't exist. They are not objects. Come on, you can't keep saying that. Truth exists objectively. What is that? It's not an object. And that truth is better than falsehood. No. Yeah, falsehood, if falsehood is lying, but if I need to lie to the Nazis by the door to save my children, I bet you that I'm going to lie all that I want, right? Even if I know the truth. So then falsehood is better than truth, right? It's an old problem, an old critique of Kant's, duty-based morality. What if there's Nazis by the door? Are you going to tell them where children are? He would say yes. I would say hell no, right? Okay, if I tell you that I like chocolate ice cream and you tell me that you like vanilla, it is impossible to prove that vanilla is objectively better than chocolate. Well, why would you be concerned about that? Who gives a flying frick about chocolate, right? Or what tastes best? The moment that you correct me with reference to objective facts, you are accepting that objective facts exist. Now we are talking about facts. Facts weren't a part of it before. What? Objective, truth and falsehood, fact. Now facts are in the fray. The moment that you correct me with reference to objective facts. Yeah, but if it's objective, I can't correct you with objective facts, because then we have to be agreeing about that object. It has become objective because we agree. So I wouldn't correct you if I agreed with you, right? If I don't agree with you, well, you can't tell me that I don't experience, or that I should experience elephant or shouldn't experience elephant, as I couldn't say to you. So I couldn't correct you, right? Unless I thought that my experience was actually an objective world that I had access to, and because you're saying something different, you're wrong, right? Then you're becoming some sort of master of the universe, where you know what's outside yourself, and if others don't agree with you, there's something wrong with them. Now, this is a area I would very much like that you didn't venture into, because that is going to end up in authoritarianism, right? This is the same as Plato's forms, just in another way, right? And you're going to say, well, I have access to the objective, and you're stupid because you don't understand it, right? Premise 7, peaceful debating is the best way to resolve disputes. Peaceful debating is the best way to resolve disputes. There's some weird premises, right? If I tell you that the world is flat and you pull out a gun and shoot me, of course I would shoot you. I mean, why not? This would scarcely be an example of a productive debate. Well, it depends on it depends on how much I want to shoot you, I suppose. Okay, enough of the fun. True, our disagreement would have been resolved, but because only one of us was left standing at the end. If you told me in advance that you would deal with any disagreement by shooting me, I would be unlikely to engage in a debate with you, I suppose. Thus, it is clear that any debate relies on the implicit premise that evidence, reason, truth, and objectivity are the universally preferable methods. Oh, of course, they're universally preferable, because those are the terms we need to, bring in. So, and then we just need to add some behavior later, and then we have universally preferable behavior. Hey, ding, ding, ding. Methods of resolving disputes between individuals. It would be completely illogical to argue that differences of opinion should be resolved through the use of violence. The only consistent argument for the value of violence is the use of violence. It will be useful to keep this particular premise in mind, since it will be very important later on. Again, I have this, head-spinning feeling that I'm constantly trying to attach myself to what the meaning or what you're trying to say, and I'm constantly thrown off because I can hardly get my mind wrapped around what you're saying. And these terms keep changing, and I don't understand the definitions, and you seem to be equating words with the same meaning, and it's really a big mess. In essence, then, debating requires an objective methodology. Well, methodologies cannot be objective. I have to point it out again and again. Through meaningful language, in the pursuit of universal truth. Universal truth. Now we have universal truth. What the hell is that? If you don't experience the elephant, unless the first time you experience that elephant and it keeps being that fucking elephant for the rest of your life, it's going to be false at some point, right? That proposition. So how can it be universal truth? You have to explain, otherwise you are just shooting yourself in the foot. Nobody can follow this, right? Nobody can follow this. I mean, I know I'm sitting here talking about it and reading and trying to think at the same time. Maybe it's not optimal for, a perfect understanding. Nevertheless, I mean, it's very difficult to follow your sort of steps of thinking. This preference for universal truth, now there's a preference for universal truth. How did that arrive? This preference, objectively preferred to personal error. What's an error? Well, it just keeps going, man. I have fallen off the wagon. I simply can't follow you anymore. Okay, let's do this. The preference for universal truth is not a preference of degree, but of kind. A shortcut that reduces your driving time by half is twice as good as a longer route, but both are infinitely preferable to driving in the completely wrong direction. I suppose. I'm not sure. In the same way, the truth is not just better than error, it is infinitely preferable or required. Premise 8, individuals are responsible for their actions. If I argue that human beings are not responsible for their actions, I'm caught in a paradox, which is the question of whether or not I am responsible for my argument, and also whether or not you are responsible for your response. If my argument that human beings are not responsible for their actions is true, then I am not responsible for my argument, and you are not responsible for your reply. However, if I believe that you are not responsible for your reply, I would make precious little sense to advance the argument. It would be exactly the same as arguing with a television set. Maybe I'm a little tired. I have a sense that I should be able to follow this, but it seems that I can't. The question of responsibility is, of course, closely related to the question of free will versus determinism, which will be the subject of another book. Okay, I'm looking forward to that book. Thus, fundamentally, if I tell you that you are not responsible for your actions, I'm telling you that it is universally preferable for you to believe that preference is impossible, since if you have no control over your actions, you cannot choose a preferred state, i.e. truth or falsehood. No, it seems to me to be complete nonsense. I'm unable to follow this. Maybe it's just me. I'm certainly not ruling that out, but I can't follow. I'm also a little tired. It's in the evening now, right? So I wasn't expecting it to be so difficult for me to wrap my head around. Thus, this argument, like the above argument, are self-destructs. Okay. So now we are getting to universally preferable behavior. I think that will be a thing for now. We have the 8 premises, and to be quite honest, I don't get it really. What I have a feeling of is that you are really, really, really trying to connect the dots to arrive at a preconceived idea where we're going, right? You're cherry picking premises that sounds the right way, and it has a lot of preference, and has a lot of universality and all sorts of stuff. And if you define ethics as universal preferable behavior, then the dots will converge into something that sounds like you have proven something, right? But you haven't really done anything ethically within ethics. You haven't found sort of, you're starting, you have to start sort of wide. So I feel that you're covering everything, and then you slice it up in two parts, just dichotomies or trichotomies or whatever it is. So I feel, okay, yeah, there's nothing that is left out that is sort of, oh, we glossed over that and we forgot that. That's exactly what the feeling I have with these premises. They are sort of cherry-picked to lead me in a certain direction. I'm not sure that you haven't left something out, because sort of all sorts of new terms pop out. As I point out, I don't remember exactly which one they were, but so the universally objective and universal truths and all sorts of others. So how did they arrive? They haven't been defined. So how should I understand them? Maybe I have an idea what they mean, but that's not necessarily the same meaning you have for them. And then it will destroy my understanding of these premises, right? So I feel very much there's sort of a word salad. There's a lot of words and it seems to go around in circles, not really getting anywhere, but these terms, preferable and universal, seems to be more and more prevalent and sort of converging towards the combined term UPB. So that is going to be the proof that you are attaching labels to your sort of these objective, whatever it is, and arguments and so on, debates and discussions, and then end up saying, oh, it ended up in UPB, so therefore UPB. I'm not very keen on it, to be quite frank. It feels contrived. Absolutely, it feels contrived. It feels maybe not exactly manipulative, but cherry-picked to reach a specific goal. And then I have a clear feeling that things are left out, or things are presented in a way that feels like there should be more to it. And these premises feel like they're lit here and a little here and a little there and a little there. And then so premise one, premise two, UPB, done it. So, okay, this is the end of part 8, and subscribe, like, and comment, and so on. And if you're on Discord, contact Manipil, and I'll give you an invite for my server. So have a nice day, or evening, or morning, or whatever time it is at your place on the globe. Providing that it's a globe, we don't know that. It might be a hexagon. Okay,